Barefoot and hungry, she begged for a hot meal, and what happened next will shock you. The evening air was heavy and cold, the kind that made people pull their jackets tighter and walk faster. The street was crowded, full of noise, lights, and the smell of food. Cars moved slowly, horns sounding again and again. Shop signs glowed brightly, calling customers inside. People laughed, talked on phones, and carried warm food in their hands. Life was moving fast for everyone else. On the edge of that busy street near a small food stall, she sat quietly on the pavement. She was barefoot. Her feet were dark from dust and small cuts. Her clothes were thin and worn, hanging loosely on her tired body. Her hair was messy, tied back with a broken elastic. She looked young, but her face carried a tiredness that made her seem older. Hunger had taken away the color from her cheeks, and her eyes looked dull, as if they had cried too many times. She had not eaten properly in 2 days. Her stomach hurt, not just from hunger but from the fear that came with it. Every sound felt louder when you were hungry. Every smell felt sharper. The scent of hot food from the stall beside her felt almost painful. Rice, bread, and cooked spices filled the air. Her mouth filled with saliva, but she swallowed hard and looked down. She told herself to be brave. Slowly, she stood up. Her legs shook, but she forced herself to walk toward the people standing near the stall. She waited for a moment, watching their faces, trying to choose someone who looked kind. It was not easy. Most people avoided eye contact. They were busy, tired, or simply not interested. She finally spoke, her voice soft and weak. "Please," she said, "can you help me with a hot meal?" The words felt heavy as they left her mouth. Every time she asked, it felt like something inside her broke a little more. A man in a clean shirt looked at her and then quickly turned away. A woman pulled her child closer and whispered something, walking faster. Another man shook his head without even listening fully. Some people looked at her with anger, as if her hunger was an insult to them. Others pretended she did not exist at all. Each rejection hurt. She stood there for a long moment, her hands shaking at her sides. She felt small, invisible, and unwanted. The street was full of people, yet she felt completely alone. She wondered how it was possible to be surrounded by so much life and still feel like you did not belong anywhere. Her mind went back to how different her life once was. She remembered a time when she had shoes. Simple shoes, nothing special, but they were hers. She remembered waking up in a room with a door she could lock, a bed she could sleep on without fear. She remembered working hard, earning little, but enough to eat. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. A loud laugh pulled her back to the present. A group of young people walked past her, holding food containers, joking and smiling. One of them looked at her bare feet and laughed softly, as if she was part of a bad joke. She looked down quickly, her face burning with shame. She moved a little farther down the street and tried again. This time she spoke to an older man standing alone. "Uncle," she said politely, "I haven't eaten since yesterday. If you can help me with food." He looked at her from head to toe. His eyes were cold. "Go find work," he said sharply. "Don't beg." She wanted to explain. She wanted to say she had tried. She wanted to say that sometimes life breaks you so badly that standing up again feels impossible. But the words stayed stuck in her throat. She simply nodded and stepped back. The sky grew darker. The streetlights came on, casting long shadows on the road. The night air became colder, and her bare feet felt numb against the hard ground. She hugged her arms around herself, trying to keep warm. Her hope was slowly fading. She thought about leaving the area and finding a quiet corner to sit in for the night. Maybe sleep would make the hunger easier to forget. Maybe tomorrow would be better. Or maybe it wouldn't. She had learned not to expect much from tomorrow. Just as she turned away from the food stall, her stomach growled loudly. The sound embarrassed her, even though no one noticed. She closed her eyes for a second and took a deep breath. That was when she heard a voice. "Wait." She opened her eyes slowly, afraid it was her imagination. A middle-aged man was standing a few steps away. He wore simple clothes, stained slightly with oil and work. His face was tired, but his eyes were calm. He owned the small shop next to the food stall. She had noticed him earlier, quietly working, not talking much. He looked at her feet, then at her face. "Why are you barefoot?" he asked gently. She swallowed. "I lost my shoes," she replied softly. It was easier than explaining everything. He nodded as if he understood more than she had said. "Have you eaten today?" She shook her head. For a moment she expected him to turn away like everyone else. Her heart prepared for another disappointment, but instead he gestured toward his shop. "Come inside," he said. "It's cold out here," she hesitated. Fear and hunger fought inside her. She had learned to be careful. Not everyone who smiled meant well, but something in his voice felt different. It was not loud or demanding. It was simple. Slowly she followed him. The shop was small and warm. The light inside felt soft after the harsh brightness of the street. He pulled out a chair and pointed to it. She sat down carefully, as if afraid she did not deserve the space. He placed a plate of food in front of her. Steam rose from it. It was not fancy, just rice and cooked vegetables, but to her it looked like the most beautiful thing in the world. "For now, eat," he said. "We can talk later." Her hands shook as she picked up the spoon. The first bite made her eyes fill with tears. The food was warm. It filled her stomach and her chest at the same time. She ate slowly at first, afraid it might disappear if she rushed. With each bite she felt a little stronger. The man did not stare. He went back to his work, giving her space and dignity. As she ate, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: safety. She did not know yet that this moment, this simple plate of food, was the beginning of a change she never expected. She only knew that, for the first time in days, she was no longer invisible. She finished the last few bites slowly, almost carefully, as if the food might disappear if she moved too fast. When the plate was empty, she held the spoon for a moment longer, her fingers warm now, her hands steadier than before. The tight pain in her stomach had softened into a quiet fullness. It felt strange, good, but strange, like her body was remembering something it had almost forgotten. The man placed a glass of warm water beside her. "Drink," he said gently. She nodded and took small sips. The warmth traveled down her throat and settled inside her chest. She did not rush. Nothing in her life felt rushed anymore. Everything had slowed down since she lost her place, her job, her sense of direction. Hunger had taught her patience in the hardest way. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the hum of the shop's old fan. He looked at her for a moment, then sat across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "You're welcome," he said. "No one should sleep hungry." Those words almost broke her. She lowered her eyes quickly, afraid that if she looked at him, the tears would come. She had learned to cry quietly without making a sound. Crying loudly often made people uncomfortable. Quiet tears were easier to hide. After a few moments, he spoke again. "What's your name?" She hesitated. Names felt personal. Names carried history, and she was tired of explaining her past. But his tone was calm, not demanding. "Amna," she said softly. "I'm Rashid," he replied. "I own this shop." She nodded. She had guessed that already, but hearing it made the space feel more real, more grounded. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the noise of the street continued, but inside the shop it felt distant. The walls were simple, the shelves slightly messy, but the place felt safe. For the first time in days, she was not worried about being asked to leave. Rashid broke the silence gently. "How long have you been on the street?" Her fingers tightened around the empty glass. She thought about lying. A small lie would be easier, but something about the quiet room made truth feel possible. "A few weeks," she said. "Maybe more. I stopped counting." He did not react with shock or doubt. He simply nodded as if he had expected that answer. "Do you have family nearby?" he asked. Her throat tightened. "No," she replied. It was the simplest answer, though not the full truth. She did not tell him about the house that never felt like home, about the anger, the shouting, the fear that had followed her since childhood. She did not tell him how she had left with a small bag and big hopes, thinking she could handle life on her own. She did not tell him how quickly things had fallen apart. Not yet. Rashid leaned back slightly. "You don't look lazy," he said. "You look tired." Those words surprised her. People usually saw what they wanted to see: a beggar, a problem, someone to ignore. No one had called her tired before, as if her pain had a reason. "I tried to work," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I really did." "I believe you," he replied without hesitation. That simple sentence felt heavier than any promise. Outside, the food stall owner began closing up. Chairs scraped against the ground. The smell of cooked food faded as the night deepened. Rashid glanced toward the door, then back at her. "It's late," he said. "Where do you usually sleep?" Her hands went cold again, even though the shop was warm. "Wherever I can," she said. "Sometimes near the bus stop, sometimes behind closed shops." He frowned slightly, not in anger but in concern. "That's not safe," she shrugged. "Nothing is these days." Rashid stood up and walked toward the back of the shop. She heard him move things around. For a moment, fear returned. Had she stayed too long? Had she asked too many questions with her silence? He came back holding a small folded blanket. "You can stay here tonight," he said simply. Her head snapped up. I don't want trouble," she said quickly. "I can leave, I'm fine." "I know," he replied calmly. "I'm not asking you to stay forever, just tonight. It's cold." She looked at the blanket, then at him. Her heart beat faster, not from hunger this time, but from uncertainty. Trust had not been kind to her in the past. Every offer came with hidden costs. "I can clean," she said suddenly, "or help with something. I don't want charity." Rashid smiled faintly. "We'll talk about that tomorrow. For now, you need rest." Rest. The word felt foreign. He showed her a small space behind the counter, not a room, just a quiet corner with a mat on the floor. It was simple but clean. To her, it felt like a gift. She sat down carefully, folding her legs beneath her. The blanket was thin but warm enough. As she wrapped it around her shoulders, a deep tiredness settled into her bones. "Good night," Rashid said before turning off the main lights. "Good night," she replied, her voice steadier now. When the shop fell quiet, she lay down and stared at the ceiling. Her mind raced, replaying the day again and again, the street, the rejection, the hunger, and then the warm plate of food. She pressed the blanket closer to her face, breathing in its clean smell. Tears slipped from her eyes, but this time they were different. These tears were not only from pain, but from relief. She slept deeply. Morning came softly. Sunlight slipped through the front window, warming the shop floor. She woke up slowly, confused at first, then remembered where she was. Panic rose for a second, then faded as she saw the blanket, the shelves, the quiet space. She sat up quickly, folding the blanket neatly. She did not want to seem ungrateful or careless. Rashid entered with 2 cups of tea and some bread. "You're awake," he said. "Yes," she replied. "I can help now." He handed her a cup. "Drink first," she obeyed. The tea warmed her from the inside. Strength returned little by little. After a while he said, "If you want, you can help me clean the shop today. I can give you food in return." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes," he said. "Nothing complicated," she nodded quickly. "I can do it, I promise." And she did. She swept the floor carefully, wiped shelves, organized small items. Her movements were quick but careful. She worked with focus, as if this small task mattered deeply, because to her it did. Work meant dignity. It meant she was not just surviving. Rashid watched quietly. He noticed how seriously she took even the smallest task. Later, as she finished, he placed another plate of food in front of her. "Eat," he said again. As she ate, she felt something new growing inside her. Not hope exactly. Hope felt too big, too dangerous, but something close to it. She did not know yet that this place, this man, and this simple chance would lead her toward a future she could not imagine. For now, she only knew one thing. For the first time in a long while, tomorrow did not feel completely empty. The next few days passed slowly but steadily. Amna woke up early each morning, her body still tired, but her mind sharper with the promise of a small purpose. She helped Rashid with simple tasks, sweeping the floor, organizing items on the shelves, washing dishes, and even helping a few customers who came in for tea or snacks. Each task was small, but each gave her a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time, she felt that she could do something right and that her efforts mattered. Rashid never rushed her, never scolded her for small mistakes. Instead, he guided her quietly, showing patience in the way he spoke and in the way he moved around the shop. "Take your time," he would say. "You will learn." These words were strange to her. In her past, mistakes were punished or mocked. Here they were simply steps in learning. It made her want to try harder, not for anyone else, but for herself. She also learned a new rhythm of life. The mornings began with simple chores. The afternoons were quieter, fewer customers came, and she often had the chance to rest, sometimes even sitting quietly with a cup of tea, watching the street outside. Life moved slowly here, but it was peaceful in a way she had almost forgotten. Peace was like a gentle hand on her shoulder, reminding her that maybe, just maybe, she could belong somewhere again. During these quiet hours, Amna began to open up in small ways. She told Rashid fragments of her story, not all at once, but in bits, like carefully dropping stones into a stream. She spoke about leaving home, about the fear that had made her run, about the jobs she had tried and lost, and about the nights she had spent on cold pavements. Rashid listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. His presence felt like a safe harbor in a storm she had weathered alone for so long. One day, while helping organize some boxes in the storage room, she paused and said softly, "I was ashamed that I couldn't handle life." She looked down at her hands. "I thought people would hate me for being weak." Rashid shook his head gently. "Being tired or struggling does not make you weak," he said. "Everyone falls. It is falling that teaches us how to rise." Amna felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Most people had only shouted or turned away. She wanted to believe him, but it was difficult. Trust did not come easily to her anymore. It had been broken too many times. The days continued, and slowly, Amna began to regain strength, not just in her body but in her mind. She learned to walk without wincing from hunger. She learned to lift heavier items without fear of failing. She even began to notice little details around her. The warm aroma of freshly brewed tea, the sound of a customer laughing softly, the sunlight through the shop window in the early morning. Life was no longer just survival. It was beginning to feel real again, but her past still lingered. Some nights when she lay under the blanket behind the counter, memories returned. The cold pavements, the hungry stomach, the harsh words of strangers, they haunted her like shadows. Sometimes she would wake up in a panic, her heart racing, and only the warmth of the shop and the memory of Rashid's kindness calmed her. She realized healing would not be quick. It would be slow, and it would require courage she had almost forgotten she possessed. One afternoon, a young woman came into the shop. She was polite, well-dressed and friendly, but something in her expression made Amna tense. The woman glanced at her and smiled faintly. "Do you work here?" she asked. "Yes," Amna replied quietly, unsure of what to say. She was used to being invisible. She wasn't used to being noticed. The woman nodded. "I think I've seen you before, not here, somewhere else. Maybe at a cafe or a shop." Amna's stomach tightened. Recognition could be dangerous. She had learned to hide, to keep a low profile. She shook her head politely. "I don't think so," she said softly. The woman nodded again and left, waving politely. But the encounter stayed with Amna. She realized that the world she had fled from was not completely gone. Pieces of her past could appear at any time. She felt a mixture of fear and curiosity, fear of being exposed, and curiosity about what had changed in her absence. Rashid noticed her unease. "Someone made you nervous?" he asked. Amna shook her head. "Just memories," she said. "Sometimes they catch up with you when you least expect it." He nodded knowingly. "Memories can be heavy," he said, "but they don't define you, only your choices do." His words stayed with her. She began to see her life differently. Yes, she had suffered. Yes, she had been hungry, alone, and afraid. But she also saw that she was capable of change. She could make choices now, small ones at first, but real ones that could shape her future. Over the next few days, Amna started to explore small ambitions. She asked Rashid if she could help with more tasks, stocking shelves, preparing small items for customers, even learning how to handle the cash register under his careful guidance. Each task was a challenge, but each task built confidence. She realized she could trust herself to do something well, and that was a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. One morning, while sweeping the floor, she found an old notebook that had been left behind by a previous worker. Inside, someone had written simple advice about life. Take one step at a time. One small action can change everything. She smiled quietly to herself. Maybe that was true. Maybe she could take one small action each day and begin to rebuild her life. It felt like a tiny spark inside her chest, fragile but alive. At the same time, Amna began noticing other people in the neighborhood. A woman selling flowers across the street, a child helping his father carry boxes, an old man feeding stray cats. They all seemed busy, but they all had kindness too. She realized that not everyone ignored suffering. Some people helped quietly in their own ways. That realization gave her hope. Maybe kindness was more common than cruelty, she thought, even if it was easy to overlook. One evening, Rashid came to her quietly. "Would you like to stay a little longer?" he asked. "We have a small corner where you can rest tonight again. If you want, you can help tomorrow too." Amna looked around the shop at the familiar shelves, the warm light, the quiet corner. She felt something shift inside her. "Yes," she said softly, "I'd like that." She realized that she had begun to trust, not fully but a little. Trust was like learning to walk again after falling. You started with small steps. She was ready to take them. In the days that followed, Amna and Rashid settled into a gentle routine. Work, food, rest, small conversations, and quiet moments. Slowly she felt stronger, more aware of herself, and more willing to face the future. The world outside the shop was still harsh and unpredictable, but inside she felt a growing sense of safety. Safety, she realized, was not just a place, it was a feeling, and it was something she could carry with her if she allowed it. One afternoon, while she was arranging items on the top shelf, she caught herself laughing softly at something Rashid said. The sound startled her. She had not laughed like that in weeks, maybe months. The feeling was unfamiliar but welcome. For the first time in a long while, she realized that life could have small joys, even in difficult times. That night, as she lay under the blanket behind the counter, she thought about the future. Not in grand plans or dreams, but in small steps, waking up, helping with the shop, eating a proper meal, and sleeping safely. Each step seemed manageable, and that was enough for now. She realized that survival was no longer the only goal. She could start living too. Amna closed her eyes and felt the blanket around her shoulders. She thought of Rashid's kindness, the small victories of the day, and the quiet moments that made her feel human again. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time she felt ready to face it. And deep down, she knew that her journey was far from over. There were challenges ahead, memories, fears, and the harsh world outside. But she also knew that she had found a place that believed in her, even when the world had turned away. And for Amna, that belief, that small spark of hope, was everything. The morning sunlight came slowly, spreading a soft warmth across the small shop. Amna woke up to the familiar sounds, the low hum of the street outside, the gentle rustle of Rashid moving behind the counter, and the distant calls of a few early customers. She stretched, feeling her body stronger than the day before. The last few weeks had taught her patience, endurance, and the quiet strength of routine. She had started to feel capable again, not just surviving but moving forward. After finishing breakfast, she went to the back to tidy her small resting corner. She folded the blanket neatly and placed her few belongings in order. It was a simple act, but it gave her a sense of control she hadn't felt in weeks. In a world that had been unpredictable and cruel, keeping her space organized felt like claiming a small victory over life itself. As the shop opened fully, customers began trickling in. Amna assisted Rashid, handling small orders, arranging items, and cleaning tables. Each task made her feel useful, and slowly, a quiet confidence grew inside her. She began to notice herself smiling more, even at strangers, and feeling lighter than she had in a long time. That afternoon, while helping Rashid restock some shelves, the door opened, letting in a gust of wind and a familiar, confident voice. "Amna," she froze, her hands trembling slightly. She turned slowly and saw a woman standing near the entrance. Well-dressed, polished, and with an expression of recognition, the woman's eyes widened and she took a step closer as if trying to confirm that it was really Amna. "Yes," Amna said cautiously, "that's me." The woman's face softened. "I remember you. We used to work together at the cafe on Elm Street. You were always so hardworking, always helping everyone." Amna's heart thumped loudly in her chest. Recognition was dangerous. Her past had taught her that sometimes people remembered only to judge or to point out mistakes. But something about the warmth in this woman's voice felt different. It was not anger, nor pity, nor mockery. It was simple acknowledgement. They stood in silence for a moment, looking at each other. Memories flooded Amna's mind. The cafe, the long hours, the friendly chatter with colleagues, the small pride she had once felt in her work. She had missed it, though she hadn't realized it until now. I didn't expect to see anyone from there," Amna said softly. The woman nodded. "I didn't either, but I'm glad I did. You've always had such dedication." "Are you okay?" Amna hesitated. The truth was complicated. She wanted to say yes, but yes wouldn't explain the nights she spent hungry or the fear she had carried. She swallowed hard. "I'm getting there," she said finally. The woman smiled. "I'm glad. I've actually been looking for someone reliable for a new project at the community center. Someone who is careful, hardworking, and honest. Would you be interested?" Amna blinked, her mind spinning. A job offer, from someone who knew her skills. She had not expected that. Her hands shook slightly. For weeks, she had been working just to survive, never thinking that opportunity might find her again. Rashid, noticing the interaction, gave her a small nod of encouragement. He had always believed in her, and now someone else was beginning to see what he had seen all along. "Yes," Amna whispered finally, almost afraid her voice would betray her excitement. I would love that." The woman's face brightened. "Great. We can discuss details later today. I'll leave my number with Rashid. Come by any time." As she watched the woman leave, Amna's chest felt tight, not with fear but with something new. Hope. It was fragile, tentative, but it existed. The thought that life could change in a moment was almost overwhelming. She sat down for a moment, resting her hands on the counter, and let the feelings wash over her. Rashid placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "See," he said quietly. "I told you, one step at a time." "Opportunities come when you are ready," Amna nodded. I almost didn't answer the door," she admitted. "I was scared." "Scared is natural," Rashid replied. "It means you care, just don't let it stop you." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Amna continued her duties, but her mind kept returning to the offer. She thought about her past, the mistakes, the rejections, the nights on the street, and how different things were now. She realized that while her life had been harsh, it had also prepared her for moments like this. She had endured hunger, fear, and isolation. She had learned resilience, and now opportunity was knocking. That evening, after the shop quieted down and Rashid had closed the counter, he looked at her thoughtfully. "You've done well these past few days. I can see a change in you. You are stronger now and more aware. The world can be harsh, yes, but you're not the same as before." Amna looked down at her hands. "I still feel scared sometimes," she admitted, "and sometimes I feel like I'll fail again." "Everyone feels that way," Rashid said. "Even those who seem confident, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking the next step, even when you are afraid." Amna absorbed his words. She thought about the offer from her former colleague, about the community center, about stepping into a world she had once known but had feared she'd lost forever. She realized that the fear was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. She could move forward, one step at a time. Over the next few days, she began preparing for the new opportunity. Rashid helped her polish her small skills, organizing, managing simple tasks, communicating clearly. He gave her tips on being confident without being arrogant, patient without being passive. Every suggestion, every small lesson, reminded her that she was capable. Finally, the day came for her to visit the community center. She dressed carefully, in simple but clean clothes. Rashid handed her a small bag of food and a warm cup of tea. "Take this with you," he said. "You'll need energy, and remember, confidence is as important as skill." Amna thanked him quietly, her eyes bright. She had never felt this mix of fear and excitement before. As she walked to the center, her feet felt steady, her posture taller. She realized that for the first time in weeks, she was walking toward possibility, not just running from fear. At the community center, she was greeted warmly. The woman from the cafe explained the project, a small initiative to help children in need, organizing supplies, keeping records, and assisting with daily activities. It was simple, but meaningful. And more importantly, it was a place where Amna could contribute, feel useful, and be recognized for her abilities. As she began helping, she felt the familiar nerves in her stomach. But this time, she didn't shrink. She focused on the tasks at hand, organizing papers, arranging materials, and assisting the children. Each small success built her confidence. The children smiled at her, trusting her guidance. Their smiles were unspoken reminders that she had a role, a purpose, and a place in the world. By the end of the day, Amna was exhausted, but not in the old way. This exhaustion was satisfying. It came from effort, achievement, and engagement. For the first time in a long while, she felt proud of herself. On her way back to the shop, she thought about Rashid, about the small kindness that had saved her from despair, and about the surprising turn her life had taken. She realized that the world could be cruel, but it could also be generous in unexpected ways. And sometimes, just sometimes, people noticed the good in you when you had stopped noticing it in yourself. When she returned to the shop, Rashid greeted her with a warm smile. "How was it?" he asked. Amna smiled back, tired but happy. "It was good. I think I can do this," she said. "You will," he said firmly. "I know you will." As she settled into her corner that night, she felt a quiet sense of hope growing in her chest. She still had challenges to face, fears to overcome, and memories to reconcile. But she also had opportunity, support, and a renewed sense of self. And for Amna, that was more powerful than anything else in the world. The next chapter of her life was beginning, and this time she felt ready to meet it head-on. The morning air was calm and bright as Amna woke up, stretching beneath the thin blanket that had become her small comfort. She had grown stronger over the past few weeks, not only in body but in spirit. Each day had brought small victories, completing tasks, earning meals honestly, learning new skills, and even finding the courage to face people who had once seemed intimidating. Life no longer felt like a chain of endless hardships. For the first time, she could imagine a future that was not defined by fear and hunger. She got up carefully, folding her blanket and tidying her corner. Rashid was already at the counter, arranging some shelves. His presence had become steady, a quiet anchor in her life. He greeted her with a small smile. "Good morning, Amna, ready for another day?" "Yes," she said softly, smiling back. "I feel ready." Breakfast was simple, a warm plate of bread and vegetables, a cup of tea. But this morning, the food tasted richer than ever. Not just because it nourished her body, but because she could now eat without fear, without shame, without the constant weight of hunger pressing against her mind. After breakfast, she began her usual tasks. Today felt different, though. She moved with confidence, sweeping the floors, arranging items on shelves, and helping customers with ease. Each small act reminded her that she had value, that she could contribute meaningfully to the world around her. Even the customers noticed. A few gave her smiles that weren't hurried or distracted. They were genuine, as if they saw her as someone who belonged. By mid-morning, Rashid approached her quietly. "Amna," he said softly, "you've been working hard. How about taking a little break? Sit for a moment." She hesitated but obeyed. She sat down at a small table, her hands resting on her lap. Rashid handed her a cup of warm tea. "You've changed a lot in these weeks," he said. "Stronger, wiser, and more confident. I'm proud of you." Amna felt warmth flood through her chest. Pride had been a rare feeling for her in the past, replaced by shame and self-doubt. Hearing it now, spoken so genuinely, made her chest swell. She nodded quietly, taking a careful sip of tea. "Thank you," she said softly. "I couldn't have done this without you." He shook his head. "No, you did it yourself. I only gave you a chance. You took it." The words lingered in her mind as she returned to her tasks. Later, while organizing a corner of the shop, she noticed a small boy outside, barefoot and shivering in the cold. Her heart clenched. The boy reminded her of herself just weeks ago, hungry, tired, alone. Without thinking, she stepped outside. "Hey there," she said gently, crouching down to his level. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up at her with wide, cautious eyes. I haven't eaten today," he whispered. Amna nodded slowly. "I know that feeling," she said softly. She glanced at the shop and saw Rashid watching from the doorway. He gave her a small nod of approval. She reached inside and grabbed a small piece of bread she had set aside from breakfast. "Here," she said, handing it to him. The boy took it hesitantly, then began eating quickly, his eyes lighting up as warmth and food touched his stomach. For the first time, Amna understood fully the power of kindness. She had received it when she had nothing, and now she could give it. The act did not require wealth, status, or grand gestures, only a small heart willing to care. And in that moment, she realized that her journey was no longer just about survival. It was about helping others, about creating small ripples of hope wherever she could. Later that day, Amna visited the community center for the first time since receiving the offer from her former colleague. She walked in with steady steps, feeling the familiar nerves of starting something new. But now, unlike before, she felt capable. She greeted the children with a warm smile, organized supplies, and helped staff with simple tasks. Each moment reinforced the sense that she could contribute meaningfully, that she belonged somewhere, and that her past hardships did not define her worth. The director of the center noticed her dedication. "Amna," she said with a smile, "you have a way with people. You handle responsibilities quietly, but efficiently. We could use someone like you full-time." Amna felt a surge of hope and excitement. The opportunity she had only dreamed of weeks ago was now within reach. She thanked the director humbly, her heart racing with gratitude and determination. Returning to the shop that evening, she found Rashid preparing to close. "How was it?" he asked, genuinely curious. "It was amazing," she said softly, smiling. "I feel like I can really make a difference there, and I think I want to continue. I want to help." Rashid nodded. "I knew you would. You have a strength inside you that not everyone can see. Now the world is beginning to see it too." That night, Amna lay down in her small corner, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the nights she had spent hungry and alone, the streets that had felt unforgiving, the people who had ignored or judged her. And then she thought of Rashid, of the stranger who had offered her a hot meal and a safe place to sleep, of the kind woman who recognized her skill, and of the small acts of kindness she had experienced along the way. She realized something powerful. Life could change in a single day, but only if someone believed in you, and only if you believed in yourself enough to take the chance. She had received kindness when she needed it most, and now she was ready to give it, to take steps forward, and to embrace the possibilities around her. Over the next few weeks, Amna's life settled into a rhythm of growth and hope. She worked part-time at the community center while helping Rashid in the mornings. She earned enough to buy her first pair of shoes since being on the street, a small, simple pair, but to her, it felt like reclaiming a part of herself. Each day brought small victories, a child smiling at her guidance, a customer thanking her, a task completed well. Each victory strengthened her confidence and her belief in her own worth. One evening after closing the shop, she stepped outside and saw a young woman sitting on the pavement, shivering and hungry. Amna's heart clenched with recognition. She walked over and handed her some food. "Here," she said gently. "It's warm, eat." The woman hesitated, then took it gratefully, her eyes wide with relief. In that moment, Amna felt a deep sense of purpose. She had been there herself, barefoot and hungry, unsure if anyone would notice. Now she could offer hope, even in a small way, to someone else. Amna returned to her shop and sat quietly, feeling a warmth she had not known for months. The journey had been long, painful, and filled with uncertainty. But here she was, nourished, respected, recognized, and ready to face the future. The world had once seemed like a place that would crush her, but she had discovered that kindness, courage, and determination could carve a path to safety, hope, and opportunity. As she lay down that night, she thought of all the small steps that had brought her here: the plate of food, the blanket, the chance to work, the encouragement of Rashid, and the recognition from her colleague. She realized that life did not need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. Even the smallest acts, the quiet moments of care, and the courage to keep moving forward could create transformation. Amna closed her eyes, smiling softly. Tomorrow was another day, full of work, learning, and hope. She had survived the streets, but she had also begun to live. And in that living, she had discovered something extraordinary: the power of compassion, the strength inside herself, and the ability to change her story. The girl who had once begged for a hot meal was no longer invisible. She had become someone who could stand, walk, and help others stand as well. And in that, she found the greatest gift of all: purpose, belonging, and a chance to shape her own future. For Amna, the journey had begun with hunger and despair, but it ended with hope, strength, and the quiet knowledge that a single act of kindness could rewrite a life. And now, she was ready to give back the same gift to the world that had once saved her.